He said, I'll tell you what. You leave
Where the
here.
fuck Trump at?
Go to college. Then you can come back and work with me. My singular
There he
reason
is.
for going to college. Sure enough, when he got back, when I came out, he was organizing in Detroit, 83 campaign. When Jonathan came to town, made me carry his suitcase. Jesse Jr. had me put him on my
I thought
back.
they had like
They
a
really
duty
abused me, y'all,
to
as
get
kids.
all the publicity.
Now I make Jonathan carry my briefcase.
Like, oh, something going over here. You gotta show your face
But
over
no.
here, you know.
Indeed, I was mentored by Reverend from that day on. He assigned me to Mother Jackie's best friend in Detroit who ran our push operation, Annette Rainwater. She then mentored me. I ran the operation in Detroit, and then when we ran for president in '88, I was part of the management of the state, the largest victory we had. And so our relationship came full circle.
Full screen. Why is
And then some years later, in '97, in fact, I left after being elected, youngest judge in Detroit, 15 years out of jail. I left that after a few years to serve as his vice president of Rainbow Push. Well, then came television calling. And I was a little scared to tell him I had the offer because I'm loyal to you. You're the reason I'm here. So I got the nerve up. I went and I showed him. I said, Reverend, these white folks won't give us some money for our story.
Can you please just hear me out? No.
No.
All work management platforms are the same. Monday.com
now
is the one you
it
actually love to
refreshes and
use. It lets you
plays.
set
Look
up
at
your
that.
workflows yourself. No admin, no long approval process. You're in charge. If it's any type of work.
I want you to take this so that you can spread
When they
our
started doing it
message
like Twitch.
of hope to millions and millions of people you will inspire to overcome their obstacles as we've overcome ours. And so for the last 27 years, indeed, thank you all, the longest running black host in the history of America. Thank you, Reverend Jackson. We've been able to spread that message to millions of people for 27 years, all because God bless the Reverend Jackson. Lastly, people often ask, what was the best wisdom? Because he's the wisest man any of us have ever met, no doubt. What piece of wisdom? I said, well, it was about really when I met him. I was giving him the poor man's story. Reverend Jackson, my mama died when I was a teenager. I don't have a daddy, and I'm living in the projects with my brothers, and they doing all. I said, hey. He said, well, I don't have a daddy either. He said, I had 3 daddies. I had 3 last names. He said, why are you feeling sorry for yourself? Jesus could have been a hopeless street youth. But he fought back. And the way he continued to talk about it, some way I seemed that he was reflecting on his own. And I began later to put it together. And I said, yes, indeed. Jesse Jackson
that shit hitting
could have been a street youth. Born under the same circumstances. Born in substandard housing in Greenfield.
Go to
3
the back.
last names. Wasn't sure who his father really was. Folks gossiped.
Come on now.
Joseph can't have no baby. Who that baby daddy? Didn't have the right to vote in Greenfield under King Herod. The government was on his back.
Yeah, come on now.
J. Edgar Hoover. But he didn't run to the corner and complain. Oh, my mama was a teenage mama. I don't have the right to vote. The government is on my back. Give me a swig of that wine.
Yeah.
He didn't do that. He said, I am the son of Helen Burns.
I always get this
and
one
I
viewer.
have come
Who are
and
you?
sent
You
my
never say
God
nothing.
to change my condition and the condition of this world.
Like, hey,
And I bet you he would say to us today
what's up?
that we are all sons and daughters of God. And if we continue to fight, we continue to pray, we continue to march, we will continue to change our condition and the condition of this world. Keep hope alive.
Come on, let's thank all of these speakers. The work of Reverend Jackson is alive. The Rainbow Push Coalition is alive and strong. Can we show some extra love as we welcome the son of Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson? Please welcome the CEO of the Rainbow Push Coalition, Mr. Yusef Jackson.
We gather here today to pay tribute, to give thanks, and to celebrate the life of a man who occupied many spaces in our lives, in this nation, and in the world. For many of us, our beloved leader. For others, our brother. For so many, our friend. A grandfather to my 5 children. A husband of 64 years. To my mother. And to me, my father, Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr. That was part of his beauty. My mother would often say, wow, your father has such remarkable range that in one moment he can be way up here, and the next moment he comes right down to eye level. His body of work spans more than 6 decades, so vast that no single homegoing service can fully capture it, but it's both an honor and a heavy responsibility to try. As I grieve and wrestle with my faith in the loss, in the wake of this loss, the scripture that says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning, sits heavily in my belly. I find myself balancing the sorrow of the dark night, comforting my kids and answering their questions about the loss of life and the cycle of life, and managing my own personal grief against God's promise. The joy comes in the morning. And what a morning God gave my father. 84 years. He would often say, Yusef, that Martin died at age 39. He was taken from us far too soon. He said Malcolm died at 39. He never thought he would live this long. A life so full of work and witness, a life and legacy we honor publicly and proudly. His record standing firmly on the side of justice. It will stand the test of time. The Reverend always taught me that we should measure someone not simply by where they ended up, but where they started from. He was born out of wedlock, deep in the valley of the Jim Crow South under the heavy boot of Southern apartheid. As a boy, teased for having 3 last names, and he struggled with the stutter. Yet he rose from those beginnings to become extraordinary, to become a blessing to the world. And he always knew what set him on the right path. A loving mother, a family, a welcoming church, a close-knit community that helped guide a young boy of immense energy, intelligence, and ambition. My father was what Dr. King called maladjusted to injustice. He simply never accepted it. He went to jail at 17 years old in Greenville, South Carolina, protesting for the right to use a public library. And even near the end of his life, he never spoke to me about his existential struggle with life, his inability to express himself clearly, the loss of his gifts, his inability to walk and move. Instead, he urged me to organize churches and pastors to help feed millions of people who are affected by food insecurity as a result of the loss of SNAP benefits. He carried a well-read Bible, not as a symbol, but as a guide. He lived a revolutionary Christian faith rooted in justice, nonviolence, and the moral righteousness of standing with the least of these. He practiced that faith, sometimes on his knees, but more often on his feet. on picket lines in jails, at makeshift hospitals and parks in New York City, comforting AIDS patients, and in communities across the country. He often said, "I intend to die with my shoes on." And he taught us that if you're faithful over a few things, God will make you ruler over. And he taught us that with faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains, win peace, free hostages, give hope to the masses. So we remember him not for what he accumulated, but for what he gave. He used his gifts to give voice to the voiceless, free prisoners, and build the Rainbow Coalition, bringing together the rejected stones of society, instilling hope in them and reminding them that as God's children, they are somebody special. He was deeply involved in the political struggles of his time, but his gift was that he could rise above them. It's not about the left wing or the right wing. It takes two wings to fly. For him, the goal was always the moral center. His campaigns called America to move from racial battlegrounds to economic common ground and on to moral high ground. And that vision allowed him to transcend the limitations of his circumstances. He endured insults and dismissals, rejection, yet he kept appealing to our better angels and urged us to keep on keeping on. Even as his body began to fail, his spirit and imagination never did.
How long is it gonna take?
He talked about organizing a peace mission to Ukraine.
Dang.
He wanted to appeal directly to Putin. He wanted to organize ministers to help negotiate peace in Haiti. The Reverend's mind and will was strong even as his body failed him. He was very clear about the challenges we face today. He believed the progress made during what historians call the Second Reconstruction, the era that grew out of the civil rights movement and expanded democracy for millions, was now facing renewed resistance from the highest levels of our government. The foolish denial of threats to democracy and to decency, corrosive inequality, catastrophic climate change, endless wars, a renewed arms race, global pandemics, and more. And he reminded us that in each of these crises, it is always the least of these who suffer first and suffer the most. And that conviction shaped his ministry. In his final months, he spent a lot of time with his grandchildren. Private time.
What? Come on,
No
bro.
moms and dads allowed. He loved it, and they loved it. And after he passed, I asked each of my children, Sky, Yusuf, Cassius, Atticus, Matthias, what was their last conversation with their grandfather? I asked, what did he say to you? Each of them, separately and individually, thought for a moment and told me, Dad,
Mailing and shipping can be frustrating, but Stamps.com has made it easy for years.
Here you go. Just print whatever postage you need.
There's no way I can get all this out today.
And today, we're better than ever.
Don't worry. We just use Stamps.com when we have to send letters or packages.
Mail, ship, and schedule pickups all from one platform. At Stamps.com, we're happy to have Maribel's stamp of approval. Start your risk-free trial today at Stamps.com.
Listen, it's called Connect Team, and it's insane. I don't do schedules or timesheets manually anymore.
And it works?
the good Reverend, my father, to rest today, and will honor him by building upon his work and taking up the challenge. And so while he would be delighted to witness this gathering of friends and allies, and sorry to not be here to conduct it personally, he would be intent that we stay the course and carry on the struggle for justice. I thank you all for being a part, not just of his work over the years, but to the shared commitment of our future together. Keep hope alive.
Come on, let's celebrate our brother, Mr. Yusef Jackson. I want to apologize in advance to Governor Gavin Newsom, California, Governor Wes Moore, Maryland. Come on, clap your hands and let's celebrate them. So grateful to have you. I want to apologize in advance as I introduce the governor of the greatest state in these United States of America, Governor J.B. Pritzker.
You said it. Let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream. Justice in a too often unjust world. For Reverend Jesse Jackson, each day,
Bro. See,
each day was a new opportunity to bring justice in a too often unjust world. His ambition, the North Star of his advocacy, was to shape a world where justice is not an anomaly but a constant, where fairness and equity and dignity are so ubiquitous in our lives, they simply flow amidst us like water. Reverend Jackson was at once a mighty roaring river, able to create movements and galvanize masses with his words and his passion, and a gentle brook, able to provide guidance and comfort to the beleaguered and the bereaved. He could lift up and connect with an audience of millions with the same intimacy and fervor that he could with an audience of one. He inspired us not just in his conviction, but in his joy. Not just in his righteous anger at injustice, but in his boundless love for communion. Not just in his words, but in his deeds. He kept hope alive. Now, I find it somewhat difficult to memorialize a man whose presence always loomed so large among us. You can still feel his presence in this room with us here at the House of Hope. You can still feel his presence in so many ways. Every day he would honor us in the way that today we honor him. And you could feel his spirit in the movements for justice that have grown from the seeds that he tilled. Now, to the world, Jesse Jackson was an ambassador of hope for the oppressed who met with kings and queens and presidents and dictators and clergy of all the great religions. But here in Chicago, he was our neighbor. He was our friend. We were so proud. We are so proud. Here, his message of hope was one he offered in a friendly smile to the child playing in front of their home, or the tap on the shoulder for the young man looking for just a little bit of encouragement. He taught us to expand our ambitions and dare to imagine a better world, and to be kind and decent to one another. He brought enormous pride to the people of this city and this state. And on a more personal note, it has been an honor that my relatively short time in public office overlapped with Reverend Jackson's long tenure. And let me assure all of those who are here today that even as his body started to fail him, the Reverend's mind remained sharp. He never failed to pull me aside at an event to ask about something in the news or offer a word of advice or encouragement. He was politically connected. He knew. He shared an affliction common to all those in this room. He loved the political game all the way to the end. And while we know that we shared him with the whole world, Reverend Jackson belonged to Chicago. And Chicago belonged to him. He was ours and we were his. I am somebody. That wasn't just a slogan, it was his credo. It was Jesse's blessing on each of us, on all of us. A pronouncement of pride and accomplishment, pride and determination. It was his reminder of the incredible power that each of us has to lift ourselves up. The gift of dignity in our personhood that God had bestowed upon us. The power that each of us wields that can change the world. I am somebody. To his beloved wife, Jackie. To his loving children, Santita and Jesse Jr., Jonathan, Yusuf, Ashley, Jacqueline, and the entire family. MK and I and our whole family grieve with you in your loss. While Reverend Jackson meant so much to the world, you were the world to him. We will forever be grateful for your sacrifice in sharing him with the rest of us. To honor his legacy, let today be a new beginning, not an ending. Let's follow in his footsteps and be trailblazers and not just pathfinders. Let's bring justice to a too often unjust world until it rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. May Jesse Jackson's memory be a blessing to us all.
Again, everybody, as we celebrate Reverend Jackson's life, let's again welcome President Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden. Let's celebrate them. Again, let's celebrate President Bill Clinton and Secretary Hillary Clinton. Can we celebrate again President Barack Obama? And can we show our love for Vice President Kamala Harris? While Reverend Jackson was a global citizen, Chicago was home base. And so please help me welcome the mayor of the greatest city in the world, Sweet Home Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson. Come on.
Thank you for that introduction, and good morning, everyone. It is truly my honor to be here today as mayor of the city of Chicago to celebrate a man who was my dear friend, a mentor, and a source of inspiration, Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson Sr. Thank you to Mother Jackson, the entire Jackson family, for the grace and the courage that you all exude And Mother Jackson, we don't mourn and grieve as the world because we are not ignorant to what has happened. And you will see him again. That's not a promise from a politician, but from the word. And he said, if it weren't true, I would not have told you so. Now, to the Jackson family, I'm not trying to start any trouble, but I looked at the program and I didn't see any West Side representation. I didn't see nobody from the Church of God in Christ on the program. So I know I represent the city of Chicago, but God bless you, Bishop Shears. I guess they wanted us to get out on time, so they. But on behalf of my wife and my entire family, I say thank you for the care that you have shown us. From one first family to another, we love you. By evidence in this audience, the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, and the world, the country agrees. One quick story. Reverend Jackson may have been the most competitive individual that I've ever met. So a few years ago, we were wrapping up a meeting on the west side of Chicago at Reverend Johnny Miller's church. And Zeke, we started talking about football. And at the time, Lamar Jackson was on his way to becoming the MVP of the National Football League. And I looked at Reverend and I said, now there's a Jackson that's really making a name for himself. And you know, Reverend did not like that. And he looked at me and he said, you know, I played that position. And he said, you know, I was better than Lamar Jackson. Zeke, true story. He said, he might be taller, faster, and stronger, but I'm better than him. And I said, Reverend, well, that doesn't leave too many more categories to determine greatness. And I said, in all seriousness, what makes you better? He said, because of my instincts. See, in sports, you hear about how athletes have a good feel for the game. Something innate that can't be coached, that allows them to read the field and make split-second decisions that ultimately position their team to win. Reverend will be remembered certainly as an incredible oratory champion, but to the people in Chicago, we knew him as a brilliant strategist, a master negotiator, an organizing savant. His instincts. See, he didn't shy away from the painful realities of racism and hatred, but he had a God-given ability to bring people in, to encourage them in, and to enlist them into the fight of our collective liberation. It was his instincts that understood that labor and faith were one and the same, as Dr. King prophesied. It was his instincts to stand up against school closures and the shuttering of mental health clinics. It was his instincts that led protests down Michigan Avenue when a boy's life was taken by a police officer and then government decided to cover it up. It was his instincts. It was his instincts to run in 84 and 88, but not in 92, to make way for somebody in the deep South and a brother on the South Side to become president of these United States. It was his instincts. See, I had the privilege to accompany Reverend to Selma one year, and while we were there, he recounted the days and weeks that were spent organizing to get folks to walk with them across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And he said, now that history has proven us to be right, he said that everybody and their mama was on that bridge. But he knew the struggle from going town to town, and he was calling people out of isolation and into community, understanding that the bridge is a symbol that burdens all of us. It's what connected us. It's what was waiting for us on the other side. He had a feel. His instincts understood that that bridge was a representation of the cross. See, it was the Bull Connors of the world and state-sanctioned violence that they unleashed on our people. It was a cross brought to bear by the most egregious alignment that can materialize in a fight against inequality. Reverend Jackson's instincts understood the words of James Baldwin, who said that ignorance and power allied is the most ferocious enemy of justice. But his instincts understood that if there's a cross to bear, we need a symbol of a promise. And that's when he formed the Rainbow Coalition that said that whosoever will, let them come. it would be necessary for the movement to build the future that he saw where America could finally live up to her ideals. And when I think of Selma and that storied march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, I know that Reverend Jackson knew exactly how much wickedness and hatred waited for them on that bridge. Beaten, abused, intimidated, they marched anyway. They bore the cross because they understood that on the other side of the bridge, his instinct said there's a win. And see, in America, we find ourselves at a bridge, and we are confronted in this moment. And that bridge is now described as borders, where borders get to determine how human dignity is determined by which side of the border you live on. He understood the bridge. And so now we are in the midst of a choice to choose hope over despair, light over darkness, love over hate, because he knew there was too much to gain on the other side of the bridge. Bishop Sheard, I think I feel my help coming. Because on the other side of the bridge, Rodney, housing as a human right. On the other side of the bridge, health care for all. On the other side of the bridge, safe and affordable cities, accessible transportation, finally fully funding our public education system. It is time to cross the bridge, you all, to build an economy that works for all. Black, brown, white, Asian, young, old. It is time for the ultra-rich to pay their fair share in taxes on the other side of the bridge. Reverend, you crossed your bridge. We know our assignment. We see you on the other side. God bless you.
Reverend Mayor Brandon Johnson, everybody. And the whole church said, amen. Thank you so much. Before we get ready to bring the next set of speakers, and we look forward to what you will share, straight ahead is a clock. It's a clock. We would love for you to help us as we press towards our goal. Hasn't this been fantastic thus far? Can we thank all of our speakers and participants? Can we please welcome one of Reverend Jackson's favorites, Ms. Opal Staples.
Donald Trump's allies are flooding this race with outside special interest money. I'm Cleopatra.
And now we go to the very latest in the war with Iran. In its 7th day, U.S. Central Command releasing this video. They say it shows Iranian targets being decimated by U.S. forces. Another CENTCOM video release shows more of the U.S. combat power in Iran, all part of Operation Epic Fury.
And strikes really ramping up in both Iran and Lebanon now, with explosions heard across the Tehran and Beirut overnight. The IDF releasing some new video as well of the strikes, saying their 50 fighter jets, quote, dismantled an underground military bunker in Tehran. Meantime, Sri Lanka says it has launched a rescue operation for 208 crew members from a second Iranian naval ship. The country's president saying that the Iris Vushir requested permission to dock at a port in Sri Lanka after one of its engines had unspecified damage to it. The decision to take custody of that ship and its crew comes a day after the country rescued 32 people from the Iranian warship, the Iris Denia, which the U.S. destroyed with one torpedo. The Sri Lankan Navy also recovering 87 bodies, they say, from the water.
Well, President Trump said he had no time limits on how long the war could go on. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth saying it had only just begun.
And Local 10's Syra Onwer is in our newsroom now. She has the latest developments in the...
As long as it's going to take, man. Yeah.
This ongoing war. Syra?
Christy, Eric, explosions lighting up the sky over Tehran. Residents there saying it was the worst night of the strikes on the capital city. The Pentagon now vowing to dramatically surge firepower over Iran. President Donald Trump taking to his Truth Social platform this morning to set terms for an end to U.S. strikes on Iran, saying in part, quote, there will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. After that and the selection of a great and acceptable leader, we and many of our wonderful and very brave allies and partners will work tirelessly to bring Iran back from the brink of destruction. U.S. Central Command releasing video this morning of Iranian targets hit by U.S. forces as military strikes continue. As smoke covers the city of Tehran, strikes from Iran on the decline. Israeli Defense Forces releasing this video from Tehran with the caption, 50 Israeli fighter jets dismantling Ali Khamenei's underground military bunker beneath the Iranian regime's leadership compound. Israel launching a broad-scale wave of strikes on Iran's capital city and Lebanon's capital city of Beirut. Operation Epic Fury nearing the end of its first week. In Shiraz, Iran, residents are waking up to destruction and mounds of rubble following an overnight U.S.-Israeli strike. In Israel, this video captures the sights and sounds of missiles intercepted in the sky this morning. Attacks continuing across the Middle East. This is video out of Beirut, where the ongoing turmoil has displaced families. You can see residents sleeping and starting fires in the streets. A UN official says about 100,000 people have fled to shelters in Lebanon, and the number of displacements is only expected.
Sad, man. Everything you work for, gone.
To grow and further draw in U.S. allies.
What Iran is doing by targeting allied countries that would otherwise want to stay out of this, they've actually pulled them into the American orbit.
The death toll also rising. More than 1,200 people killed in Iran since Saturday, according to the state-run news agency.
If you think you've seen something, just wait. The amount of combat power that's still flowing, that's still coming, that will be able to project over Iran is a multiples of what it currently is right now.
Well, President Donald Trump telling CNN today that Iran's leadership has been, quote, neutered, and he's looking for new leadership that will treat the United States and Israel well.
Why that word, though? Why that word? Neutered?
Even if that's a religious leader and it's not a democratic state. I'm live in the newsroom, Syra Onwer, Local 10 News.
Taxes was chasing updates and getting nowhere. Now
But first, breaking tonight, multiple sources tell Fox the U.S. and Israel are getting help tonight in their offensive against Iran. Thousands of Kurds are launching a ground offensive inside Iran. Meantime, President Trump saying the U.S. is in a very strong position now in its conflict with Iran. He's adding that it seems everyone who wants to lead that country ends up dead. The top U.S. military commander in the Middle East says the American assault has just begun. The U.S. Senate has just rejected a Democratic effort to limit the president's authority to attack Iran. A U.S. submarine today sank an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean. First time that's happened since World War II. Iran is warning of the destruction of the Middle East's military and economic infrastructure. Turkey, meantime, says NATO defenses intercepted a ballistic missile launched from Iran before it entered Turkey's airspace. And U.S. authorities are working to get Americans out of the Middle East every day, while American troops are getting an assist from a key ally. Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin begins our coverage tonight. Good evening, Jen.
Good evening, Brett. A senior U.S. official tells Fox that thousands of Kurds have crossed from Iraq into Iran to launch a ground offensive. Their goal, to give the Iranian people the confidence to rise up. These are Kurdish Iranian militias entering from Iraq.
According to U.S. Central Command, in its first 24 hours, the U.S. military operation was twice the scale of shock and awe at the start of the Iraq War. An American submarine hunted and sank an Iranian frigate, the Iris Dina, in the Indian Ocean.
For the first time since 1945, a United States Navy fast attack submarine has sunk an enemy combatant ship using a single Mark 48 torpedo to achieve immediate effect, sending the warship to the bottom of the sea.
Separately, the U.S. military sank one of Iran's newest prized Navy vessels, a corvette named after Qasem Soleimani, the general who headed the IRGC Quds Force, who President Trump ordered killed during his first term. Sri Lanka rescued 32 survivors from the Iris Dina. 80 others on board were killed.
This war of aggression is not our choice. It is the war of choice for the U.S. government and the Israeli regime.
For the first time in combat, the U.S. military fired long-range precision-guided munitions. And now that it's destroyed Iran's air defenses, the Pentagon will move away from standoff weapons like Tomahawk cruise missiles, glide bombs, and drones, which fire lighter payloads. The U.S. can now begin using stand-in weapons like those carried by the B-52 bombers, which have to be right over their target to drop heavier munitions, 500, 1,000, and 2,000-pound bombs. CENTCOM says the number of Iranian ballistic missiles fired are down 86% from the first day, and one-way attack drones are down 73%.
Sure, Iran will still be able to shoot some missiles and still be able to launch one-way attack drones at civilian targets. And their proxies will attempt to attack our embassies, bases, and soft targets. We will find them, and we will kill them.
Today at the White House, Caroline Leavitt was asked about the administration arming the Kurds to inspire a popular uprising in Iran. Her response, quote, "Any report suggesting the president has agreed to any such plan is completely false and should not be written." Kurdish leaders in Iraq have denied that any Iraqi Kurds have crossed the border. Brett?
All right, we'll follow that, Jen. Thank you.
Not sure if you saw the news, but Fox News is claiming President Trump is declining in the polls. President Trump responded and says Fox News polls can't be trusted.
America.
This decision to launch this operation was based on a cumulative effect of various direct threats that Iran posed to the United States of America, and the president's feeling based on fact that Iran does pose an imminent and direct threat.
I've said repeatedly since the first briefing over 10 days ago, there was no imminent threat to the United States that I believe would constitute putting our sailors and soldiers in harm's way.
Well, was Iran a threat to the U.S. or not? Joining us tonight to talk about this and the situation in the Middle East is former Secretary of State, former National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice. Secretary Rice, thanks for being here. You know, we have these polls out about Iran, national security threat. You know, most people who answer these polls, it's 61% yes, 38% no. This is the banter back and forth, even as obviously the military operation is being characterized as being very successful, and we have markers on that. What's your thoughts about where we are right now and where we may be headed?
Well, the most important thing, Brett, and thank you for having me, but the most important thing is to recognize that Iran has been at war with us for at least 47 years, all the way from 1979. People may forget. They took our embassy hostage 444 days. They were responsible for the killings of 300 plus Marines in Lebanon in the early 1980s. If you ask people about Iraq, what was the source of many of our casualties in Iraq, you'll get estimates as high as 75 or 80% of them were due to Iranian-made roadside bombs. And so they've been at war for us a long time. They also have developed the military capability to have reach outside of the boundaries of Iran, including Hezbollah and Hamas, which they both arm and equip, and continue to arm and equip even after the events of the summer. And I myself negotiated 4 Security Council resolutions calling them a threat to international peace and security under Chapter 7, the strongest chapter of the UN Security Council resolutions, because of their nuclear ambitions. So to say that this regime was not a threat, I think is simply not. It's
It's a threat. It's a threat, bro.
ahistorical. They have been a threat for a long time.
You know, you can praise the military's action, its effectiveness, how precise it is, the amazing things we're seeing every day of the U.S. military and the Israeli military, for that matter, while still raising questions about how long is this going to last. Is it worth the blood and treasure that we're doing currently? You know, another poll, the handling of Iran, does it make us safer, less safe, no difference? Less safe is at 51%. So there is this skittishness or skepticism out there, even if you're wholeheartedly supporting what the military is doing every day.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform made for anyone with an idea and a drive to bring it to life. Describe what you want and watch it take shape. You can plan, customize, and expand in any direction. From tools built for one to platforms ready for many. From passion projects to enterprise-grade systems. Everything is built in and ready to launch.
Well, because there is uncertainty with any military operation and what the aftermath might be. But I think if the goal of the administration is to render Iran incapable of using its military forces outside of its borders, of threatening our neighbors, our allies, of threatening our bases abroad, which we're seeing they are capable of doing. If it is trying to deny them a conventional umbrella for their nuclear ambitions, that is a worthy goal. Now, what comes after? People are, of course, concerned about that. But if you can render Iran essentially incapable of military action against us and against our allies, that's worthy. And I think what they're trying to do is to neuter Iran as a military power in the region. And by the way, the Iranians, who I think made a strategic blunder in attacking the Gulf states like the UAE or Kuwait or others, is demonstrating that it is its goal to be a destabilizing force in the Middle East. Yes, you can still be concerned about what may come after. You can still be concerned about the uncertainties of warfare, but to render this awful regime incapable of using its military power, that's a worthy goal.
There's, talk about not restricting what the military may or may not do going forward. You've obviously been through this with wars as National Security Advisor, as Secretary of State, the mission creep fear. Now there's talk and reports about the Kurds possibly arming the Iranian Kurds and being a force on the ground. Your thoughts about that, knowing all you know about that region?
Well, the one thing I don't know is the nature of these reports that we're hearing about Kurdish incursions, if you will, into Iranian territory. And we probably ought to be circumspect about making judgments about what that really means in terms of Kurdish activity. Is it independent Kurdish activity? Is it somehow coordinated Kurdish activity? We'll learn those things later. But it does speak to the complicated demographics of Iran, and we have to keep that in mind. The Iranian population includes a large Azeri population. It includes a large Kurdish population. Those populations have been all the Iranian people have been badly treated by their regime, but there have been a lot of suppressions of those ethnic groups. So we do have to be aware that Iran is not a homogeneous population. It's also a population of over 90 million people on territory that's twice the size of Texas. So it's going to be a complicated set of circumstances here as we go forward.
Last thing, you've been in the halls of power, in the meetings behind closed doors. Talk about this decision by Commander-in-Chief to do what President Trump has done and what that means big picture in the world looking at.
Groups of people, but in 1988, Reverend Jackson was the most popular person in the world. As my kids used to say, in the whole entire world. Everybody wanted to talk to him. And the president of a small Central African country, Gabon, Youssef, you remember this, President Bongo said, we would like him to come to the continent. And that is just when we had changed from becoming black or Afro-American to African-American. And so Reverend Jackson, we negotiated this, and I was a baby lawyer my first year out of law school. And we negotiated Reverend coming to Gabon with a team. And Reverend, you know, back in the day when he landed, there would be a press conference. And there were thousands of people there to greet him, to welcome him back to the motherland. Some of you are nodding in the audience because you were on that trip. And when Reverend got off the plane, they had like 4 or 5 translators for him because, you know, this was the Reverend Jesse Jackson. And he got off the plane and he started talking, and the translators were looking, you know, like, oh my God, what is he just saying? And they could not quite translate the essence of Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson. And so the translation in the first 15 seconds was not right. And as a baby lawyer, one thing I knew was that we weren't going to let history go down in that way. So I stepped in and I translated for Reverend Jackson. And he said, say that, say it, but say it. That's just what she said. And that was in 1988, and a one-time assignment that I thought would last at the end of that trip became a 38-year journey where I've had the pleasure of, thank you, I've had the pleasure of working with the incomparable mother of our movement, his daughter Santita, his son Jesse, his son Jonathan, his son Youssef, his daughter Jacqueline, and his daughter Ashley. That is why I am here today to say, ladies and gentlemen, he is a global icon. And so as I close, because Youssef is giving me that look, I'm going to close by saying this. A luta continua. Vittoria è certa. La lutte continue, mais la victoire est certaine. I say that to the grandkids, you know what I'm saying. And translated into English and to our new president and CEO, you must hear me and hear me clearly. The struggle continues. But with your magnificent leadership and support of the Rainbow Push family, CEF family, Push Excel family, Push family, and all of the magnificent volunteers and people who stand by you, victory is certain.
Good afternoon, everyone. You know, I was sitting here a little bit ago thinking, you know, I grew up Catholic. I've never been to a funeral like this. But then I don't feel so bad anymore because I don't think anyone's ever been to a funeral like this. So on behalf of myself and my family, including my sister Laura, who is here today with us, and everyone from our organization, I want to express my heartfelt condolences to the Jackson family and everyone here who knew and loved Reverend Jackson. It was a great honor of mine to get to know Reverend Jackson over the past 17 years, and he was a man I truly admired and respected. When I first met the Reverend, though, I have to admit, I was a little nervous. Everything I knew about him is something that I had read in the paper or maybe seen on TV, and his leadership and his leadership in civil rights and human rights and everything he'd done, Operation Push, everything he had done. And I knew all about that, but I'd never met the man. But knowing Jesse Jackson, the public figure, does not fully prepare you to meet Jesse Jackson, the person. In public, in pursuit of greater goals, he was bold and outspoken and defiant. But in person, he was also warm and friendly. And as many of you know in this room, he had a great sense of humor, and we laughed a lot. Now, I think a good man can speak to a large crowd and perhaps inspire the masses. But a great man can also speak to you like you were the only person in the world. And Jesse Jackson was that kind of man. Of course, I personally like to believe that all great people love baseball. I'm not really sure if that's true, but the Reverend did. In fact, he was a pretty good baseball player. He turned down the opportunity to play professional baseball to go to college to play football. And like many truly great people, he was a family man. He loved his family and was an especially doting grandfather. I saw this firsthand, as I know how much he loved to bring his family, his children, and his grandchildren to the ballpark. Tellingly, Reverend Jackson never asked to be in a suite. He always wanted to sit in the seats with the fans, even on his last few visits where his health challenges were mounting. All he ever asked for was a hot dog, a soda, and a Cubs win. And on most days, we could deliver all three of those. And while I know the Reverend loved to come to the ballpark because it was a place to be with his family, he also respected the history of Wrigley Field and knew that it is the only Major League ballpark still standing where Jackie Robinson actually played a game. Now, and of course, that's the same Jackie Robinson that Reverend Jackson so beautifully eulogized over 50 years ago. On that day, in 1972, he compared the life of Jackie Robinson to a, quote, a rock in the water, creating concentric circles and ripples of new opportunities. It occurs to me that one could say the same about the life of Reverend Jackson. He was just one big rock in the water, and he made so many ripples. Thank you.
I'm used to working with a 24-second shot clock, so I will try to extend a couple of more minutes longer. First, I want to honor the Chicago's first royal family, the Jackson family. Mama Jackson, children, grandchildren, all that you have stood for in Chicago, the home that you made, and the place of peace and safety that you gave our leader, our Chicago Nelson Mandela. Thank you. I also like to honor the 5 presidents who are sitting here today. President Harris, President Clinton, President Bill Clinton, First Lady Jill Biden, President Biden, and Chicago's own South Side, President Barack Obama. Now, I got to set the stage because a lot of us in here
South
are a
Side.
little older than some of the generation below us. So I was born in 1961 on the west side of Chicago, Cook County Hospital. But for those of us who were here living during that period of time as little young men, young women, 1961 to 1971, 63 Medgar Evans was assassinated. 65, Malcolm X was assassinated. Fred Hampton, assassinated, 69. Martin Luther King, assassinated, 68. The Kennedy brothers, assassinated. We had just come out of Jim Crow. I was the first one in my family to live outside of Jim Crow. Angela Davis was on the run. I had a free Angela Davis pen. And those of us who are sitting in this audience understood what Chicago was like. Us Chicagoans on the west side and the south side, from the
South
60s
Side.
to the 70s, when every store was burned down. There was no place to go. There was one man, again, our Nelson Mandela at that time, stood tall. And I remember my mom and I standing in a soup line on Madison and Kedzie, one of the most humiliating times of our life. We had no food. We had moved 4 or 5 times. And this beautiful man, this legend, this hero, came walking down the street. And I, as a young boy, when society was telling me I was a nobody, when society was telling me we don't even want to go to school with you, this man walked down the street and walked up to me and my mom had marched with him before. He said hello to my mom. And then he did the unthinkable. Mama Jackson, your husband kneeled down and he looked me in my eyes. And that man said, "You are somebody." At that time, I couldn't quite understand the feelings and emotions that I was having as a young kid, walking, trying to find food, looking for a place to go. But when he said, "I am somebody," it resonated with me that there was a whole world trying to make me a nobody. And when he knelt down and looked me in my eye and said, "You are somebody," And then he said, say it again. Say, I am somebody. I am somebody. I am somebody. I looked up, my mom is crying. She's proud. But we couldn't get out of the soup line, right, Jonathan? We lose our spot. Y'all know it. You standing in that soup line, your friends walking by teasing you and everything, but you can't get out. Then he lifted me up emotionally on his shoulders, them broad shoulders that we all have stood on. Emotionally, spiritually, we all stood on that shoulder, on your family's shoulders. Then he left. And I was like, Mama, that's the man we see on TV. She's like, yeah. So for us Chicagoans, right? When Muhammad Ali said, I'm the greatest, on the national stage, that resonated to everybody. But for the kids in Louisville, Kentucky, oh, it hit different. When Nelson Mandela said in Soweto, South Africa, let my people go and free them. When he walked up and he spoke, oh, it hit different there. When Reverend Jackson said in Chicago, I am somebody, and keep hope alive, oh, for us, it's different. Years later, in one of my most triumphant moments, he's running for president, 1988. We trying to beat the Lakers. We trying to dethrone the Lakers. My father-in-law, Gordon Kendall, is head of Secret Service for the family. We get a call, midnight, 1 in the morning. Hey, I'm coming to the game. I said, how you gonna get to the game? You gotta, you running for president. People, no, I'm coming to. Who just said he was the most popular man in the world in 1988? Who just said that? Was that you? 1988, he's the most popular man in the world, and he coming to my game. He shows up at the game in my most triumphant moment. We win. He walks in, and he kneels. He says a prayer. Then he lifted me up on those big, broad shoulders again. And he left. Years later, my mother passed away. And when my mother died, all of Chicago came out, represented, showed up, and we were at our lowest moment. And Reverend Jackson walked into the church.
Sorry, man.
I remember sitting there with my brothers and sisters. And it was like this man.
Let it out.
This man who's been there my whole life. When we didn't know what to say, what to do on that day. We had no words from my mama. That man walked up to the stage and said, I got this. And he sent my mama off. Beautiful words and everything else.
It's deep, bro. It's deep.
While we were at our lowest, again, he came and he lifted us up on those broad shoulders.
Well, oh, man. Hey.
Fast forward.
Right.
All of us
Grinder.
will remember the
I
day
live grinder.
when you was elected president of the
No, I
United
don't.
States.
No, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. That's what felt yesterday.
And I'll never forget that day when you walked out on the stage with your family, with our First Lady Michelle, my former teammate, played Betty basketball with Craig.
I just said I found it.
The pictures and the images, and those of you who were there, the tears that were in the audience, the long struggle. And if you can remember, the camera panned from our president to your husband, to your father, to your grandfather. And he stood there with tears in his eyes. And I know all of you remember this image. And those big, heavy, broad shoulders lifting you up, holding you high, saying, I got you. I got you. Yes, that's what Reverend Jesse L. Jackson means to us in Chicago and all royal family. So we thank you for the courage. We thank you for the faith. We thank you for believing in us. And all of us who were so devastated from the 60s and the 70s, coming out of Jim Crow, trying to make a way out of no way. When he would improvise in a poem, I am somebody, when he would say, even if I'm on welfare, I'm like, man, he talking to me. Even if I'm poor, oh, he talking to me. He had a way of connecting personally with us. So today, when he said, keep hope alive, when there was no hope for us, and all of you here from Chicago know, in the 60s, we felt like there was no hope. Hope was lost. Hope was gone. This man gave us hope, gave us life, gave us energy. And today, I want to thank all of you for showing up. And to the organizers and presenters, I would just like to say to the organizers, when you took on the challenge to bring this man home, you couldn't understand the vastness and the multitudes that he touched. So there's no way you're going to be on time. It ain't going to happen. And you know why it's not going to happen? Because all of us here, when you look around, we are from every single walk of life. Rich, poor, strong. He brought it all together. The Rainbow Coalition. Thank you. Appreciate you. Mama, don't you get up. I'm coming over to tell you I love you.
The man who got up 2 hours ago talking about a 24-second shot clock just said that he don't honor time. What Jackson family, your heart has to be beating, just beaming to know how much we all love the Reverend. It's got to be. It's got to be. And I'm with that thing. Y'all will always be our royal family, our first family, because y'all the Jacksons, y'all royalty. Well, I get the opportunity to introduce my seatmate from the Senate, who came on to be the 44th President of the United States, Chicago, ladies and gentlemen, President Barack Obama.
It's good to be home. I love you back. The book of Isaiah. Where are you at? Now, see, I believe in the Constitution. The book of Isaiah God is looking for a messenger to guide a hardened and resistant people. And the Lord asks, whom shall I send? And who will go with us? To which Isaiah replies, here I am, Lord. Send me. To Mother Jackson and the Jackson family, to President and Mrs. Biden, President and Secretary Clinton, Vice President Harris, Pastor Dates, my old friend, though he looking good, Reverend Meeks, Reverend Jenkins. It is an honor to join you today to celebrate the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, a man who, when the poor and the dispossessed needed a champion, and a country needed healing, stepped forward again and again and again and said, send me. Reverend Jackson's immense gifts were apparent at an early age, even if his circumstances conspired to try to hold him back. Born out of wedlock to a teenage mom, growing up under the oppressive cloud of segregation, confined to schools, sports facilities, movie theaters that were separate and unequal. It was a world where on Thanksgiving he'd have to wait for his mother to come home on the bus carrying leftovers from the dinner she had to cook for somebody else. A world designed to tell a child that he or she could only go so far. That to think otherwise would be foolish or dangerous. And that wisdom required you to accept your lot in life. And young Jesse refused to accept that verdict. He was a born leader, an athlete, a talker, knew how to talk, star quarterback, student body president, he could have succeeded within the confines that were determined for him and had a successful life. But like so many of his generation, so many extraordinary civil rights leaders in the late 50s and 60s, that Joshua generation, he instinctively understood that individual success meant nothing unless everybody was free. So he became inspired by the bus boycotts in Montgomery. He led 7 black students into the whites-only library, sitting down and getting arrested for reading. Think about that. The library closed, but then it reopened. And when it did, it was open to everyone. Send me, Jesse said, even as a young man, and the world got a little bit better. By the time Reverend Jackson graduated from college, he had attended Chicago Theological Seminary. He knew the nature of his calling, and he became, as everybody knows, the youngest member of SCLC, assigned to lead Operation Bread